fine night train to the end, running hard and running fast to meet my future and away from my past, taking the gamble that cannot last. Night train to the end. Hell's ride to Mundofine. Hell's ride to the end. Sold my soul to the devil's pen. He draws me hard with a merciless hand, and all I bought is a handful of sand. Night train to the end. I'm on this ride 'cause I have no pride in myself or in men or in God. Now if you want to share in the price of my fare, then fill your mind with greed that is blind and wander in its evil fog. Night train to Mundofine. Night train to the end. Running hard and running fast to meet my future and away from my past, taking the gamble that cannot last. Night train to the end.
for Spain is bound for glory. You know this train. This train is bound for glory. Everybody right here got to be holy because this train is a clean train. This train. But this train don't pull no liars. This train, you got to get off. This train don't pull no liars. This train, you know this train don't pull no liars, no false pretenders, and no backbiter because this train is a clean train. This train. This train don't pull no wankers. This train, I said this train don't pull no wankers. This train, no. This train don't pull no wankers, no crap shooter, and no whiskey drinkers. It's a clean train. This train. You know this train don't pull no jokers. This train. This train don't pull no jokers. This train. This train don't pull no jokers, no tobacco chewers, and no cigar smokers because this train is a clean train. You know this train. Let's ride the train. This train is on the way to glory. This train. Yeah, this train is on the way to glory. Woo, this train. You know this train is on the way to glory. Everybody right here, they got to be holy, holy. This train is a clean train. This train.
right. Lennon's taking the train. What's up, folks? How's it going today? Hope you're doing well out there. In here, all sorts of things. How's my week been going? Just fine, for the most part. Got some sad news this past week that Nudie the cat passed away, unfortunately. Just move this here. And pretty bummed out about that. He was my ex's cat, and he was such a sweetheart. I just loved him to death. He was the best cat I ever lived with. So that was kind of a bummer. I talked to Melissa for a bit about Nudie and just sharing some memories. I'll try to find you a picture. The other big news is that I got a new phone. Not quite as earth-shattering news as the Nudie thing, but in a way it is. Just because I had my phone, it's still over there, but it was a piece of shit. It didn't do anything. Almost unusable, really. But it's funny that it happened like the same day that Nudie passed away, or that I got a text from Melissa saying that Nudie was gone. And I was kind of showing off the cat and my dogs to some coworkers. And as I do, I don't want this thing on camera. Let's see if I can do something about that. No? What is that? I'm going crazy. That was the microphone. As I am wont to do, I was complaining the fact that the phone was slow as fuck. And one of my coworkers was just like, "Oh, I have a spare phone you can just have if you want." And I'm like, "Sure." And it's top of the line, fancy ass phone. I'd like to change the lighting a little bit, I think. Wish I could change the lighting from right where I am, but unfortunately that means I have to get up. And let's see. Excuse me a moment. It's a little better. Right then. So anyway, new phone, and it actually works. I can actually I don't know. It's been so long since I had a piece of tech that actually does what I wanted to do when I want it to be done. So it's very exciting. I don't know. I almost feel like aroused when my phone actually works. But I want to show you some pets. This is Nudie. Actually, this is one of my favorite photos. Oh my god. It's one of my favorite photos of all time. Me and the nudester. And let's see. Oh my god, he was such a cute fucking cat, dude. Look at this thing. I don't have any pictures. Well, I suppose I could scrounge up some pictures of him on the computer, but I also want to show off my new phone. So that's a good one. Anyways, he was so darling. He's just such a darling kitty. And he's very snuggly. He was very snuggly, as you can see from this photo of him and me snuggling. I could just show you pictures of this cat all day. all night, the entire stream. But I'm sure that'll be annoying, and it doesn't really look good for the reflections. Maybe I'll add some photos of Nudie onto my computer, and then I can show them off. Speaking of my computer, next step in getting... and so I'm sandwiching the news here. So I got bad news with Nudie, good news with the new phone. I had some more bad news where over the weekend I had a $1,000 dental bill in my future. I didn't have to pay it right away. They're actually going to give it to me in the middle of August, which I guess sort of explains why I'm streaming now, because fucking rent is due. I gotta figure out how the fuck I'm going to pay for this thing. But I made this amateur maneuver of not going to the dentist for about like 6 or 7 years. So don't do that. Don't do what I just did with that meme. And also don't wait that long to go to the dentist. And they're basically like, well, at least you didn't wait another 4 or 5 years to come to the dentist, because we might be able to save your teeth. Like, that's literally what they told me. It's like, if you had waited like double that length of time, you would have dentures in your future. So at least I got that. So they're gonna save my teeth. I got like 2 appointments in August to look forward to, and I think like the bills for those are like $500 each. So here I am working outside of my job. Always my favorite thing, but at least, you know, I have a lot more fun on this job than I do with my other job. Doesn't quite pay as much, but you know what? That's what all the tips are for. If you would like to help out with the stream, it would be nice if these things would actually pop up. I'm also working hard to figure out Streamlabs. I did learn recently how to do sound effects, and I would hit the sound effect that I have saved, but I know it's a clip that's going to play for like 1.5 minutes, and I don't want it to play for like a minute and a half. But I am planning on, actually, you know, since I'd like to eat up a little bit of time, I'm going to play a 1.5 minute audio clip for you folks today. So sit back and enjoy this little piece of MST3K saltiness. If it works. I hope it works. Oh God, it might not work. Please God, please Lord. Hello? Oh shit, that's even worse than it actually playing. Oh dear. What the fuck? Oh, I'm glad I did this, because now I know it's not working right now. Let's see here. Oh no. Oh no. What have I done? Oh shit. Well, I fucked up. What have I done? Yes. Oh, thank goodness. Okay. Well, I'm not sure what I did right there, but I'm gonna try to do it again. Why did that happen? I don't understand. Okay, this is it. Well, I have an uwu here. Let's see. Okay, ooh, doesn't want to work. Huh. I know this makes for compelling television. I thought I had this set up. Okay, next time I stream, I promise I will have a soundboard working, and I'll make sure it works. But for right now, I'm going to play a little bit of the new Bestie Marks, the new Revolutionary Thought, and if time permits, I will play some Red Pen. Or I might game. I gotta make dinner at some point in like an hour or two. But until then, sit back, relax, and let's watch some fucking Bestie Marx. Y'all ready for this?
The revolutionary left is in crisis. And if you ask almost anyone who is a serious Marxist on what needs to be done, they will eventually point you to the same work. What is to be done, written by Lenin over 100 years ago, is when...
So, sorry to stop it almost immediately, but I should talk about the reason why I wanted to watch this. The reason why I wanted to watch this, one, it came out today, and I very rarely have a chance to play stuff that actually came out today. The other thing is, coincidentally, I don't know if you guys know this about me, but I am a member of the Democratic Socialists of America. And a lot of people have a lot of opinions about the DSA, as it's also known. What's interesting to me is their opinions on what they think the DSA is or doesn't really align with what we do or at least what we talk about, like, because I have I'm in the Slack, baby. I'm in a DSA Slack, and it's basically like a book club, really, that occasionally meets to organize or to do whatever things makes us be able to sleep at night in this dystopian hellscape that we call realite. The capitalist variety. So my point is that it's more or less like a book club that occasionally organizes, and the thing that we read this month was What Is to Be Done by Vladimir Ilyich Lenin. I'm gonna let this play because I'm curious what Bestie Marx thinks about it, because I watched the first minute or two of this, and he does talk about how everyone kind of interprets it a bit differently. So I'm curious what he thinks about it, and then I'll try my best to give my own opinion, because I get what he means. It's kind of because there's definitely some good advice in what is to be done, but kind of what he's really trying to say kind of depends on your preconceived notions. So anyway, back to the video.
One of the revolutionary left is in crisis. And if you ask almost anyone who is a serious Marxist on what needs to be done, they will eventually point you to the same work. What is to be done, written by Lenin over 100 years ago, is one of the most cited texts in revolutionary politics. Almost everyone on the Marxist left has read or claims to have read it. It carries enormous prestige, which is why it has become a battlefield. Every variation of the left interprets it in their own way, from it being the source of Bolshevik authoritarianism to it being a guide for revolution. It's not an easy text, and most people miss its key lessons, which can make or break an organization. Even in many cases where people sympathize with Lenin, it's interpreted in such a way as to remove its sharp edge, that it's not applicable in today's democratic context, co-opting it into a tool of revisionism and liberalism, exactly that which the text fought against. But here's what's most important. Even though the specific context and the references differ, the problems Lenin was actually solving in 1902 are the same urgent problems we face right now. What strategy and mindset are to adopt in order to awaken the people in times of the rapid growth of the movement and the escalating imperialist crisis? How to guard the working class movement from being defeated by liberal ideology, and most importantly, how to actually change the world. How you read it determines what kind of organization you try to build, what kind of strategy you pursue, what mistakes you make, and whether your organization becomes a force to be reckoned with or collapses into irrelevance. These are not historical questions. It's questions that determine whether anything we do matters. So what did Lenin actually argue? What are the lessons, especially one particular lesson, most people miss or actively get wrong? And most urgently, in a historical moment where the revolutionary left is simultaneously more needed and more disorganized than it has been in decades, what is actually to be done? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and let's get into it.
So this is part of a series, obviously, that Bess is doing, or he, she, they, I don't know, where they talk about the October Revolution, obviously, and this series is really fascinating, and I would highly recommend watching all of it. But this is chapter 6, and it coincidentally is about a text I've been reading for the past month. So, hello.
Lenin opens his work by apologizing to the reader for the delay of the text's publication. He had promised it in the article Where to Begin, and it took longer than expected to appear. This is basically the story of my YouTube upload schedule. But unlike my upload delays, Lenin had considerably bigger political reasons and the Tsar's secret police on his back. One of those reasons was an attempt to unite all the Marxist organizations abroad into a single body. Lenin waited to see how it would turn out. A successful unification could have changed the whole organizational question he was trying to address. But it failed.
Uh-oh. Okay,
And it failed for a specific reason. A way of thinking that was spreading throughout the socialist movement. One that Lenin saw as so dangerous to revolutionary Marxism that it demanded a determined and systematic fight. That same way of thinking is back in full force in today's regenerating revolutionary movement. And what is to be done became the theoretical weapon for that fight. Freedom of criticism is undoubtedly the most fashionable slogan at the present time, Lenin writes at the beginning of chapter 1. The slogan was gaining traction in the left at the time. At first sight, this seems like a perfectly reasonable appeal, he says. Maybe there's a new law in Europe which prohibits socialists from free speech or doing science. But it's not so obvious that it's about that. Something must be wrong here, will be the comment of the onlooker. So where exactly is this generic slogan coming from? And why did Lenin consider it so dangerous? In the last videos, we introduced a guy called Eduard Bernstein, who was the most prominent representative of a new way of thinking in international social democracy. Social democracy back then basically meant the Marxist movement. The reason it's associated with the reformist left today has to do with this guy. We will talk more about this key part of history, which would shape the left forever. This new trend tried to revise the way Marxists think about the world by updating Marxist analysis in certain ways, which made him the first major revisionist. Lenin writes, quote, "Social democracy must change."
I want to read that. The revisionism is the systematic revision of and deviation from Marxism. The basic revolutionary principles of the proletariat laid down by Marx and Engels and further developed by the series of thinkers and leaders in the socialist revolution and construction. The revisionists call themselves Marxists, even claim to make an updated and creative application of Marxism, but they do essentially, they do so essentially to sugarcoat the bourgeois, anti-proletarian, and anti-Marxist ideas that they propagate.
Major revisionist. Lenin writes, quote, "Social democracy must change from a party of social revolution into a democratic party of social reforms." Bernstein has surrounded this political demand with a whole battery of well-attuned new arguments and reasonings. Denied was the possibility of putting socialism on a scientific basis, and of demonstrating its necessity and inevitability from the point of view of the materialist conception of history. Denied was the fact of growing impoverishment, the process of proletarization, and the intensification of capitalist contradictions. The very concept, ultimate aim, was declared to be unsound, and the idea of the dictatorship of the proletariat was completely rejected. Denied was the antithesis in principle between liberalism and socialism. Denied was the theory of the class struggle on the alleged grounds that it could not be applied to a strictly democratic society governed according to the will of the majority, etc. If capitalism wasn't
So this is the central conflict, really, with all this. My political journey has mainly been one of skip frames detected. Fuck you. Sorry. It's been a struggle because I started out in my political journey as basically an anarchist. I came of age politically in the 2000 presidential election, where I basically got into electoral politics because Jello Biafra was running for president of the Green Party. That's how it all started for me. And I had just gotten into Crass and Dead Kennedys and all that good stuff. Looking back on it, Jello Biafra had a lot of really radical ideas that is basically the DSA platform. Now DSA, I feel like a majority of the people in the DSA realize that this is a problem. They know that they can't actually depend on the Democrats to actually change things, and the fact that they're trying to take over the Democratic Party, even though a lot of their beliefs is basically what the Democrats believed 70 or 80 years ago. They realize that it's an inherent problem with capitalism. That's the main problem. You can only reform the thing so much, and in fact FDR was all about the reforms of capitalism, and in a way the Democrats come in and they fix the problem that Republicans and libertarians started, but really it's capitalism that is the problem that they fix. And then because of capitalism's inherent contradictions and the greedy fascists in the Republican Party, all those reforms get dismantled one by one over a period of several decades, which is exactly what has happened in the United States. So anyway, back to the show. So I don't want anyone to I'll talk more about it after the show, if I have time.
Grounds that it could not be applied to a strictly democratic society governed according to the will of the majority, etc. If capitalism wasn't collapsing and conditions were improving, Bernstein argued, socialists should drop the goal of revolution and instead pursue gradual change in day-to-day life. His famous line was, "The final aim of socialism is nothing to me. The movement is everything." Lenin explains that something very interesting is happening. For the first time, the fights between different trends inside the socialist movement are no longer just happening country by country. They're now international. Incidentally, in the history of modern socialism, this is a phenomenon, perhaps unique and in its way very consoling, namely that the strife of the various trends within the socialist movement has from national become international. Formerly, the disputes between Lassalleans and the Eisenachers, between Gesdists and Possibilists, between Fabians and Social Democrats, and between Narodnaya Volia adherents and Social Democrats remained confined within purely national frameworks, reflecting purely national features, and proceeding, as it were, on different planes. At the present time, as is now evident, the English Fabians, the French Ministerialists, the German Berstinians, and the Russian critics all belong to the same family, all extol each other, learn from each other, and together take up arms against dogmatic Marxism. In this first really international battle with socialist opportunism, international revolutionary social democracy will perhaps become sufficiently strengthened to put an end to the political reaction that has long reigned in Europe.
Enrollita, ponlo en español, oui. No sé, un poquito, hablo un poquito español, pero estudio español cuando yo tiendo. Lo siento. Oh man. Okay, obviously I'm a monolingual beta. But anyway, I hope you're enjoying the show. I'll get back to you.
That same pattern is visible today. Every country has its own specific conditions, but the underlying class contradictions across similar societies rhyme closely enough that the same currents keep showing up everywhere. Trotskyists, Social Democrats, or Maoists. The line struggles aren't local arguments anymore. They're happening in 100 places at once. Lenin adds that these Bernsteinian attacks weren't actually new or original. They just take from the usual liberal criticism and make it appear leftist. Thus, the demand for a decisive turn from revolutionary social democracy to bourgeois social reformism was accompanied by a no less decisive turn towards bourgeois criticism of all the fundamental ideas of Marxism. In view of the fact that this criticism of Marxism has long been directed from the political platform, from university chairs, in numerous pamphlets and in a series of learned treatises, in view of the fact that the entire younger generation of the educated classes has been systematically reared for decades on this criticism, it is not surprising that the new critical trend in social democracy should spring up, all complete, like Minerva from the head of Jove. The content of this new trend did not have to grow and take shape. It was transferred bodily from bourgeois to socialist literature. In France, this new way of understanding was already being put into practice. Engels is quoted when he wrote that France is the land where, more than anywhere else, the historical class struggles were each time fought out to a decision. There, the so-called socialists were already joining capitalist governments, even working with those people who previously massacred them, remaining there even as the police shut
I'm curious about
with those people who
Indeed, if social democracy, in essence, is merely a party of reform and must be bold enough to admit this openly, then not only has a socialist the right to join a bourgeois cabinet, but he must always strive to do so. If democracy, in essence, means the abolition of class domination, then why should not a socialist minister charm the whole bourgeois world by orations on class collaboration? Why should he not remain in the cabinet even after the shooting down of workers by gendarmes has exposed for the 100th and 1000th time the real nature of the democratic collaboration of classes? Why should he not personally take part in greeting the Tsar, for whom the French socialists now have no other name than hero of the gallows, knout and exile, nature, pendure et deporture? Apparently I need to learn every European language to be a good socialist. And the reward for this utter humiliation and self-degradation of socialism in the face of the whole world, for the corruption of the socialist consciousness of the working masses, the only basis that can guarantee our victory, the reward for this is pompous projects for miserable reforms, so miserable, in fact, that much more has been obtained from bourgeois governments. So, one of the reasons why I don't have a lot of faith that the Democratic Party can be taken over by, or at least, I'm hoping to Christ that the DSA can somehow take over the Democratic Party, because otherwise we are in big trouble. We're already in big trouble, but we are in like the kind of trouble I don't think we can pull out of unless one of the major political parties in the United States becomes like undeniably socialist. Because just look at what was going on during Obama's administration and Biden's administration. You got Obama bailing out the banks and not the working people. You got the Dakota gas and pipeline, and the beatings that took place there. You got, and during the Biden administration, you had the Columbia student protests, where you can't have people caring about the genocide, the ongoing G word going on in Palestine. I don't know. Fucking the ongoing genocide going on in Palestine. So what do? You fucking beat the students' heads in. That happened under a Democrat. And I know that, like, they're not all powerful in the government. They can't, like, control exactly what every fucking cop does. But, it's not like they went out of their way to stop it or anything. So the Democrats have shown time and time again that they're a disappointment. And the only thing that gives them any sort of saving grace at all is the Republicans are even worse somehow. General Galliffet, French general best known for being responsible for the massacres against the Paris Commune in 1871, the socialist Millerand joining a cabinet with him at the top of it was considered a seminal betrayal. Yes.
Called socialists were already joining capitalist governments, even working with those people who previously massacred them, remaining there even as the police shut down workers. You might be thinking right now, I'm not a reformist. I am already based and have already developed a firm revolutionary consciousness. What is absolutely essential to understand here is that reformism is only one final outcome of the kind of thinking fought against in What Is to Be Done, and it's not so obvious how this happens and in what ways this has already had an influence on you, and it most probably already has. It's very important to know that this way of thinking first emerged within the revolutionary movement. All of these people considered themselves revolutionary Marxists. They were far more revolutionary than the Social Democrats of today. So it's important to study and understand this very carefully, to not fall into the same traps, or to be able to guard others from doing so. And it's not just about reformism. The problem explained in this video is not interesting simply to understand the Russian Revolution. It's a very acute problem today as well. It's at the heart of the struggle of the proletariat against the bourgeoisie and opportunism within the left, which is one of the most effective means to make us ineffective. Understanding this issue is highly important, even if you are already within a principled party or ideologically solid, in order to guard against the constant, systemically incentivized drift to the right, as it has happened historically over and over. Now, freedom of criticism sounds like a good thing, right? Open debate, no dogmatism, free exchange of ideas. But the nicest sounding phrases are often where the danger hides, especially those that involve the word freedom. And Lenin sees through this and flips it completely. He says freedom of criticism actually means freedom from criticism. Freedom to import liberal ideas without defending them. Freedom is a grand word, but under the banner of freedom for industry, the most predatory wars were waged. Under the banner of freedom of labor, the working people were robbed. This opportunism, Lenin says, is what lurks behind the slogan freedom of criticism, which in truth means freedom for an opportunist trend in social democracy, freedom to convert social democracy into a democratic party of reform, freedom to introduce bourgeois ideas and bourgeois elements into socialism. If someone criticizes some aspect of Marxism, then of course the Marxist will criticize them back if the arguments are bad. But they then make these counter-arguments appear as the sin. So essentially, freedom of criticism was a sort of revisionist version of crying about cancel culture. Imagine a racist who is being criticized for saying something racist, who then goes on to complain that you can't say anything anymore, that freedom of speech is under threat, while in many cases continuing to make millions and speak freely anyway. This is also how the Bernsteinians of Europe dressed up their attempt to liberalize Marx under a progressive cover, by complaining that criticizing their criticism goes against the spirit of free scientific debate. Instead of just reacting to counter-arguments with more arguments, they went to cry about not being able to criticize. But what started happening here was way bigger. It's that Marxism was now being attacked not only by its capitalist enemies, but increasingly from within its own camp. Quote, "We are marching in a compact group along a precipitous and difficult path, firmly holding each other by the hand. We are surrounded on all sides by enemies, and we have to advance almost constantly under fire. And when we begin to shame them, they retort, 'What backward people you are! Are you not ashamed to deny us the liberty to invite you to take a better road? Oh yes, gentlemen, you are free not only to invite us, but to go yourselves wherever you will, even into the marsh. In fact, we think that the marsh is your proper place, and we are prepared to render you every assistance to get there. Only let go of our hands, don't clutch at us, and don't besmirch the grand word freedom, for we too are free to go where we please, free to fight not only against the marsh, but also against those who are turning towards it.'" This abstract trickery of words to water down Marxism is only the start of what Lenin was trying to get at in What Is to Be Done. If opportunism was pulling the movement off course, what kind of organization, leadership, and political strategy would be needed to put it back on a revolutionary path and guard it from being co-opted by liberalism? Lenin's answers are not what you would expect. In Russia, the sympathizers of Bernsteinism, the so-called economists, were gathered around several Marxist collectives and newspapers. The most influential of those was the outlet Рабочее дело.
I wanted to read that. The economists in Russia were socialists who reduced the workers' movement to purely economic struggles like wages and working conditions, and rejected the need for a broader political struggle against the state. Following a theory of stages, workers would gradually come to political conclusions by themselves. Lenin argued that this was a form of opportunism and tailism. Tailism is where you basically kind of follow the masses' lead when it comes to political struggles. Because it meant passively following the existing consciousness of workers instead of consciously developing revolutionary political awareness and organization.
Papers. The most influential of those was the outlet Рабочее дело, Workers' Cause. The influence of this paper cannot be exaggerated. Its theories had become quite dominant among the organized Marxist workers and intellectuals. The newspaper had been the voice of a group founded by Russian Marxists living in Switzerland. Among them, Plekhanov, whom we've talked about before, who was Lenin's intellectual mentor and also a critic of economism. Economism, as talked about in previous videos, was a tendency that argued that the movement should focus on workers' immediate economic struggles, higher wages, less hours, better working conditions, and let political consciousness and organization develop spontaneously out of that struggle. As we'll see, the problem causing economist thinking is very much alive today, and there's a good chance some of it is alive in you, without you even knowing it. Within Plekhanov's group, the economist faction grew stronger and eventually took over the Рабочее дело newspaper. One certain Boris Krichevsky became one of its important voices. Krichevsky was very suspicious of too much emphasis on theory and didn't like Plekhanov. Krichevsky and Plekhanov both represented opposing factions within the same group, and must have had uncomfortable encounters when both went as delegates of the same group to gatherings of the Second International in Paris. As we know from the last parts, the Рабочее дело guys weren't big fans of Iskra, the newspaper of the people around Lenin, which they criticized as being too intolerant and for being too critical of other Marxists. Iskra had predicted that Marxism would split into two tendencies, and compared this to the split between the Girondins and the Mountain, or the Montagne, two factions during the French Revolution. The Montagnards were the radical Jacobins, while the Girondins were the more moderate faction of the Jacobin movement, who also said they wanted social transformation, but were far more conciliatory, which caused the Montagnards around Robespierre to see them as traitors and opponents of the revolution. Boris Krichevsky said this was a silly comparison, since these two factions represented different class interests. One, the petty bourgeoisie and the proletariat, and the others just the bourgeoisie. In the modern socialist movement, however, writes Krichevsky, there is no conflict of class interests. The socialist movement in its entirety, in all of its diverse forms, including the most pronounced Bernsteinians, stands on the basis of the class interests of the proletariat and its class struggle. So basically what he was saying was that Lenin was wrong and mean in denouncing comrades who just might have somewhat different opinions and a different outlook. Lenin laughs at this. He says, of course, the opportunists say they support workers, but you can't judge a political tendency by what it says about itself. His greater point is that the class struggle exists inside socialist movements too.
I don't... Oh my god. Oh my god. Yeah, I'm a bit out of practice. I'm such a dunce. And this is why I need more people in chat, because I did not mean to have that happen. And what is going on here? Dear God. Whew. Yeah, I'm a bit out of practice when it comes to streaming. But, how do I get rid of this fucking chat box? There we go. Good lord. Okay, sorry about that, folks. I know not many people are watching right now, but I should have known that. I didn't look, and I didn't realize that it was just big screen. So I have my first disagreement with this video. Now, you're welcome to call me a fucking libtard or whatever, but you know, this idea that, oh, this is a rich kid. It's like fucking Engels owned a fucking cotton factory. Like, I don't think it shouldn't matter too much if you're a quote rich kid. Anyway, however, John General, a rich kid who pursued a career in parliament, a prominent possibilist leader of the French Socialist Party. I'm sure we'll get into that. Anyway, that's... Go ahead. I keep falling on my face during this stream. I'll get better.
Through ideological influences or social composition. Just pretending that everyone is fundamentally on the same side is politically dangerous, as history has by now confirmed over and over, and as we will see throughout this series. Krzyzewski then misrepresents facts to argue his point, by saying that the biggest Marxist party at the time, the German SPD, is proof that the party can allow freedom of criticism of the Bernsteinians and still remain united. Lenin debunks this as it was factually wrong. The SPD, which was a principled Marxist party at the time, in fact officially rejected the Bernsteinians twice in the Hanover and Lübeck resolutions toward the end of the 19th century. As we know now, the SPD, which was the most influential socialist party at the time, will still succumb to Bernsteinism very soon. Making these deep dive videos takes months of research, production and editing, and YouTube revenue alone only covers a fraction of the cost of keeping this going, especially where I live. Right now, the future of this project depends directly on community support. If you value this political, high-effort content, joining the Patreon for even a few bucks a month
See,
makes a massive difference.
Right there.
It literally keeps the lights on for the next video. The link is in the description, and thank you to everyone for making this possible. So, in the beginning parts of what is to be done, Lenin does something really simple, but which is crucial and utterly devastating. Lenin calls out Krzyzewski's BS, as this is exactly how liberal ideas sneak inside the socialist movement, in a very abstract, slippery way, which, if unnoticed, can lead the revolutionary movement to a dead end. His opponents at Рабочее Дело kept complaining that Lenin's publications treated Russian critics and Bernsteinians unfairly. But the problem was that they never named anyone. No names, no specifics, just a vague complaint about injustice toward unnamed people with unnamed positions. And Lenin immediately goes, okay, there are only two possibilities here. Either you're secretly talking about yourselves, which would explain why you keep denying your Bernsteinians, while defending Bernstein every single time he gets criticized. Or you're defending some other unnamed Russian revisionist, in which case, why won't you just say who it is? He calls this playing hide and seek. hiding behind abstractions, and the abstraction they hide behind most is freedom of criticism, which in truth means freedom to never take a clear position. Because if they actually believed in free debate, they'd engage concretely. They'd explain what Russian Bernsteinism looks like, how it's actually shown up in the Russian movement, and what effects it's had. Instead, they just repeat imported phrases with zero concrete content. Lenin says they are talking with the aim of saying nothing.
Sorry, I had to look ahead a little bit because I have to make dinner in about 20 minutes. So we'll watch the first half of this. And I actually, since I totally fucked up how this video is going to look, I might, I don't know, restart, do it again, start over, or not. I don't know. We'll see.
Vagueness at this level is never accidental. The fog always serves someone's interests. Speaking in puzzles, hiding one's political line and intentions are an important phenomenon to recognize, especially today. These are usual ways which bourgeois ideology uses to sneak into Marxism without anyone noticing, and then suffocate it from within. Stop purity testing, stop gatekeeping, meet people where they are. We need pragmatic solutions, not abstract theory. Now, all of these things make sense by themselves, in a vacuum, which is what makes them dangerous. Because if you don't go through the concrete arguments to follow what concrete politics are being pushed, they are just a lazy and sneaky way to dilute Marxism into ineffectiveness. Or, as Lenin would say, if you refuse to draw out lines clearly, the lines get erased for you. Dogmatism is of course a problem for Lenin. However, the accusation of dogmatism...
The treatment of Marxism as a fixed set of formulas to be memorized and mechanically applied, rather than as a scientific method for analyzing concrete historical conditions. A dogmatist substitutes quotations and abstract principles for a concrete analysis of the concrete situation.
Dogmatism is of course a problem for Lenin. However, the accusation of dogmatism often becomes a vehicle for liberalism when any firm commitment to revolutionary theory or political principles is dismissed as rigidity. Quote, "Thus, we see that high-sounding phrases against the ossification of thought, etc., conceal unconcern and helplessness with regard to the development of theoretical thought. The case of the Russian Social Democrats manifestly illustrates the general European phenomenon, long ago noted also by the German Marxists, that the much-vaunted freedom of criticism does not imply substitution of one theory for another, but freedom from all integral and pondered theory. It implies eclecticism and a lack of principle." In the last part, we saw how adherents of the Рабочее дело line argued that Iskra is way too preoccupied with the idea other, but freedom from all integral and pondered theory. It implies eclecticism and a lack of principle.
Instead of resolving contradictions, it avoids taking a firm position by combining incompatible viewpoints, often to appear flexible or non-dogmatic. This leads to confusion and opportunism because it replaces coherent strategy with vague compromise and drifting between positions. For example, trying to combine Marxist-Leninism and anarchism under one roof. I'd be lying if I said the DSA is chock full of that. No. Like, part of the problem is that there's no other option. There's no, like, unless I just want to have a Marxist-Leninist reading group in my neighborhood or whatever, there's really no other people who think about these kinds of things, you know? It's like, there's nowhere else to organize.
In the last part, we saw how adherents of the Рабочее дело line argued that Iskra is way too preoccupied with the ideological struggle, accusing the Iskraists of being detached from the masses, who are going to the streets right now, who do not care about the intellectuals' preoccupation with theory and the future. Dogmatism, doctrinarism, ossification of the party, these are the enemies against which the knightly champions of freedom of criticism in Рабочее дело rise up in arms. We are very glad that this question has been placed on the order of the day, and we would only propose to add to it one other. And who are the judges. Lenin asks, who defines what dogmatism is? Is it dogmatism to attack or defend opportunism, citing Plekhanov's group on the urgency to defeat Bernsteinism?
The other announcement by the Union abroad in 1980.
If you must unite, Marx wrote to the party leaders, then enter into agreements to satisfy the practical aims of the movement, but do not allow any bargaining over principles. Do not make theoretical concessions. This was Marx's idea, and yet there are people among us who seek, in his name, to belittle the significance of theory. It was true that with the growth of the movement, the average theoretical level of the organizers naturally lowered as more and more people joined the collectives and were preoccupied with practical tasks. But this development, also visible today, is not something to just accept and celebrate, but to make sure that theoretical training is taken seriously. Those who have the slightest acquaintance with the actual state of our movement cannot but see that the widespread of Marxism was accompanied by a certain lowering of the theoretical level. Quite a number of people with very little, and even a total lack of theoretical training, joined the movement because of its practical significance and its practical successes. Lenin says the belittling of theory has grave practical consequences, especially when your party and its identity are still being formed. A small theoretical error can send the whole movement in the wrong direction before it's had a chance to establish firm foundations. Under these circumstances, what at first sight appears to be an unimportant error may lead to most deplorable consequences. The fate of Russian social democracy for very many years to come may depend on the strengthening of one or the other shade. Many newly conscious Marxists say we all agree on the main things, so why should we split ourselves because of smaller differences? This view comes from the right place. But, as we will see, the concrete history of the Russian Revolution will confirm Lenin's view, as other groups with a different shade of socialism will even endanger the revolution. The theoretical disagreements in 1902 over spontaneity, leadership, organization were not small at all. It separated those who waited for history to act from those who acted on it. It's also easy to see where the hate for theoretical discussions comes from. People often do not take theory seriously because theory is associated with abstract thinking detached from reality. Given how bourgeois theory often operates, it's easy to see why many think this way. But communist theory is not random philosophizing. In most cases, theory is a very concrete argument to a similar problem that's already been discussed, or a concrete critique of the old worldview that fails to explain real problems. It is an explanation of contradictions in society and a synthesis of concrete historical experience of the struggle. And the working class, if it is to fulfill this biggest historical task, has to use all of international analysis and socialist experience to be successful. Quote, "The social democratic movement is, in its very essence, an international movement. This means not only that we must combat national chauvinism, but that an incipient movement in a young country can be successful only if it makes use of the experiences of other countries. He who realizes how enormously the modern working class movement has grown and branched out will understand what a reserve of theoretical forces and political as well as revolutionary experience is required to carry out this task." Lenin then refers to Friedrich Engels, who recognizes not two forms of the great struggle of social democracy, political and economic, as is the fashion among us, but three, placing the theoretical struggle on a par with the first two. He then quotes him at length to stress this important point, and I will now read out the whole quote. Pause the video if you need to take a breath and reread it. Friedrich Engels wrote, quote, "Without a sense of theory among the workers, this scientific socialism would never have entered their flesh and blood as much as is the case. What an immeasurable advantage this is may be seen, on the one hand, from the indifference towards all theory, which is one of the main reasons why the English working class movement crawls along so slowly in spite of the splendid organization of the individual unions. On the other hand, from the mischief and confusion wrought by Proudhonism in its original form among the French and Belgians, and in the other form, further caricatured by Bakunin among the Spaniards and Italians. For the first time since a workers' movement has existed, the struggle is being conducted pursuant to its three sides: the theoretical, the political, and the practical economic, in harmony and in its interconnections and in a systematic way. In particular, it will be the duty of the leaders to gain an ever clearer insight into all theoretical questions, to free themselves more and more from the influence of traditional phrases inherited from the old world outlook, and constantly to keep in mind that socialism, since it has become a science, demands that it be pursued as a science, i.e., that it be studied. The task will be to spread with increased zeal among the masses of the workers the ever more clarified understanding thus acquired, to knit together ever more firmly the organization both of the party and of the trade unions. If the German workers progress in this way, they will stand armed for battle when either unexpectedly grave trials or momentous events demand of them increased courage, increased determination, and energy. So, to conclude this first chapter of what is to be done, it's important to remember that the assault on Marxist science from the left was not just an abstract academic debate. It had real-world historical significance. Saying theory is not important can introduce revisions first abstractly and then defeat socialism in practice. This mechanism still operates today and will always operate until class society is done away with. This is why Lenin refused to treat Roboche Dielo's arguments as harmless opinion, because it has practical consequences for revolutionary organizing. Where does theory actually come from? What is revolutionary consciousness really? And what kind of organization, what kind of strategy follows from the answers to those questions? Chapter 2 is where Lenin starts answering, and it's not the answers you'd expect.
Nice cliffhanger. Unfortunately, I have to stop there because I gotta go make dinner. But and also I didn't do a very good job of streaming this. But anyway, interesting. I'm just gonna check something real quick. So if I'm using big camera, I got a big chat there. Live sheen. Okay, the chat goes away. That's what I want. Anyway, I'm gonna try to do this more often. I probably say that every time, but this time I mean it. I didn't do that much writing, unfortunately. But hopefully I will do more writing and get back to you. I gotta go make kebabs. So I will talk to you later. I love you. Have a great day.
I got handed an Ayn Rand sandwich straight from the
Oops.
shut up. Here we go. You shall work every day of your life, and you shall work from childhood to old age, and you shall work yourself into an early grave, because the boss says so, the system make you so, because the cops will beat you up if you don't. And you shall toil until you wanna faint, working so hard or for minimum wage. That barely keeps you alive, you slave. Tomorrow you shall toil again, cause Adam made the apple, is written in the Bible. Only the rich can share the bounty of God. I claim the right to be lazy. Why should I work for the boss? Why should I work 16 hours a day when 4 is more than enough? Let's get rid of all the bosses, bankers, lawyers, senators. We think the fruit of our labor will work less and will play more. And I know just how we can all do this. The one big union with all of us in it. The industrial workers of the world have always shown the way to get rid of the boss and to win the class war and make us truly free once and for all. I claim the right to be lazy. Why should I work for the boss? What should I work 16 hours a day when 4 is more than enough? Let's get rid of all the bosses, bankers, lawyers, senators. We keep the fruit of our labor. We'll work less and we'll play more. And I know just how we can all do this. The one big union with all of us in it. The industrial workers of the world have always shown the way to get rid of the boss and to win the class war and make us truly free once and for all. Make us truly free once and for all. Make us truly free once and for all. And there you have it.